Well, happy President's Day for this 2022. And I say President's Day, today is Tuesday. Yesterday was the celebrated President's Day. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Welcome to Stab the Dragon for this special President's Day edition. Whiskey review number 18 is we're going to look at James E. Pepper's 1776 Rye. And this is a suitable whiskey for President's Day, I believe. This holiday is one of those combo holidays that the U.S. government made up in 1971 with the Uniform Monday Holiday Act. Boy, that sounds exciting. And then what that did is it moved a couple of holidays to Mondays, regardless of the date that they were supposed to be on, for the purpose of giving banks, government workers, unions a 3-day weekend. I am not a fan. I remember when that law went into effect. We used to, when I was a kid, celebrated Washington's birthday on the 22nd of February, which is his real birthday. And then we celebrated Lincoln's birthday on the 12th of February. But now it's combined together. And so, oh well. Washington's birthday has been celebrated since the late 1870s, I believe, and then it slowly became a national holiday. I'm not sure exactly when it became a federal holiday, but I do know in 1971, 72, the holidays were combined. Most of the schools that I went to growing up in Oklahoma, on the wall somewhere they had a picture of George Washington, and usually a picture of Abraham Lincoln somewhere as well. But I don't recall any pictures of Andrew Jackson or James K. Polk, Garfield. Yeah, no, none of those pictures. Well, let's go on to the review. So the history of this wonderful whiskey. In 1780, the Old Pepper brand of whiskey was started in Virginia by Elijah Pepper. Now that name Elijah was also Elijah Craig had that name, so I guess that's a common whiskey name. I don't know. But Elijah Pepper. And in 1812, he moved from Virginia to Versailles, or I think they pronounce it Versailles, Kentucky. And it came to be known as the distillery eventually became known as the Henry Clay Distillery, but Old Pepper was the brand of whiskey. Now, when Elijah Pepper passed away, it descended to Oscar Pepper, his son, and Oscar hired a Scottish physician named Dr. James Crowe to help the science side of distilling the whiskey. And so he used James Crowe to revolutionized, really, the whiskey making industry. And so one of the biggest names in history of American whiskey is James Crowe. And along with it, the son of Oscar Pepper, James E. Pepper, became a huge name in the whiskey world. And what happened is Oscar died early, and James was only 15 years old when his dad Oscar died. And James, at 15, took over the distillery. All right, and so that was about 1865, if my dates are right. James Pepper was born in 1850, and then took over in about 1865. And he then was running the distillery for a little bit, but his James Pepper's guardian after his dad died was Colonel E.H. Taylor. And by 1878, when James Pepper's only 18 years old, is that right? 1878, 1850. No, that'd be 28. Lost the distillery. Well, I think my dates must be wrong there. But he lost the distillery to Colonel E.H. Taylor, who purchased it when Pepper couldn't pay his bills. It was 1878. So in 1879, he got the financial backing to start another distillery, and Pepper moved to Lexington. So, notice the intersection of several important whiskey names here. You've got James Crowe, E.H. Taylor, James Pepper. These are all in some type of a working and personal relationship. So, but in 1879, Pepper got the money and together and started another distillery, the one in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, the original distillery site there in Versailles is now the Woodford Reserve Distillery. So there's another name in this mix. So Pepper started his new distillery, and by 1890, he got Kentucky to change its laws so that he could bottle the whiskey at the distillery to guarantee the quality of the product, because fraud was rampant in the whiskey business. The distilleries could only sell barrels to a middleman, and then the middleman took care of distribution and bottling and all of that. And so it was just ripe for fraud. And Pepper, he got tired of his whiskey being diluted or, substituted for something else. And so he worked with the legislature of Kentucky and got the law changed, and he began bottling his own whiskey at his distillery. Now, James Pepper lived large. He made lots of money, but he spent lots more money. And he had racehorses. He had this rail car that would go on trips, and the rail car had the logo of the Old Pepper brand of whiskey there on the side of the rail car. He's credited with creating the old-fashioned cocktail. He introduced it to a bunch of people at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. Well, eventually his living large didn't work out so well, and he went broke again. But his wife bought the distillery. She had her own money because of racehorses and whatnot, and she bought the distillery out of foreclosure. And actually, the way the story goes, nobody in town, nobody in the state would bid against her for the distillery. So it was kind of a friendly takeover. And so they continued to make whiskey until James Pepper died in 1906. And at that point, his wife was also elderly, and she lost heart, so she sold the distillery. And then Prohibition hit just a few years later in 1919. And that hurt, obviously, all the whiskey makers. And then right as Prohibition was getting ready to end, in 1933, the distillery burned. It was rebuilt within a year or two, but the whiskey depression of the 1960s hit, and the distillery closed again in 1967 and remained closed until 2008, when Amir Pei started up the distillery again. He was a whiskey enthusiast, and he had researched. Actually, if you listen to his video on the website, he was a boxing fan, and he saw an old boxing photo, and in the back there was a banner for Old Pepper whiskey. And so he kind of started doing some research, and then he started collecting Old Pepper memorabilia and bottles of whiskey that hadn't been opened. And from there, he decided, I'm going to start this whiskey back up again. So he purchased the old distillery that was just in ruins. There at the website, it shows pictures of the old distillery. And he refurbished that distillery. He started production again and started selling James E. Pepper 1776 bourbons and ryes. Now, this rye won a gold at the New York World Spirits Competition in 2018 and double gold in 2019 at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, according to the website. Now, there's a little problem with that date, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. But that's a brief history of this brand, of James E. Pepper and Elijah Pepper, Oscar Pepper. So for history, I think this has really got a good history to it. I really like everything, even down to the modern refurbishing of the distillery. So I'm going to say 5 points is definitely deserved for the history of this whiskey. So now let's look at the marketing and packaging and the bottle. Now, I have not seen any ads for this whiskey, but I have watched a few video reviews. The bottle itself is really pretty cool. It's got the antique look. Okay, this is, you may not be able to tell, but this is a smoky, it's glass. Okay, so it's not blacked out. You can still see through it, but it's kind of smoky, maybe a slight green tinge to it, perhaps. And then the label is antiqued looking. It's got the rough edges here where it's kind of torn, it looks like. And it looks like old parchment. On the back, it's got from the Revolutionary War, the broken snake. It's got the several of the states listed there. Born with the Republic, it says. So really, this bottle, I'm a fan. Okay, I really like the bottle. It's classy. It looks old, which goes with the whole theme of the whiskey. And at the top of the label in cursive, it's got, James E. Pepper, and then it's got the large print 1776, and then straight rye whiskey. And it says this: in this bottle lies the oldest and most legendary whiskey legacy in Kentucky history. The same old style and methods have been preserved and restored in this fine whiskey. And it's got a sticker on the side, and here's the one that's a problem. This little sticker right there, and I don't know that you can read that, but I'll read that to you. It says, double gold at San Francisco World Spirits 1920. Well, the website said 1919, so, or I'm sorry, 2020. I got the wrong date there, 2020, and so, that's just a little bit of a problem there. What's right, the website or the bottle? I'm not sure. But for marketing and packaging, I really like the bottle. So, I haven't seen any ads, so I can really, I don't know. And I mean, the bottle is so good. I'm going to say 5 points. 5 out of 5 points for bottle, even though I haven't seen any ads for this. Now, the composition of this whiskey. Well, it's a 750 milliliter bottle, and it's 100 proof, which is 50 ABV. And it does say on the bottle and on the website, distilled in Indiana. Well, I know it says on the bottle. I'm not sure it says that on the website, but distilled in Indiana. So this is MGP rye, and it's got a mash bill of 95 rye and 5 malted barley, and that's per the website. But the website also says cut with the limestone water from the famous well on site. Okay, so that's, I guess that well has always been there, and so that's what makes it famous. But the interesting thing about the composition is Bullet Rye also uses MGP 95.5, and so does George Dickel Rye 95.5. But the thing about the Bullet Rye is it's only a 90 proof, whereas this is 100 proof. And I'm thinking the Dickel, I don't remember if it's 90 or 100, but Dickel does go through the Lincoln County process, and so you've got the charcoal filtering that goes on with that, and so that makes the Dickel rye really different. But the proof difference between this and Bullet is noticeable. The Bullet rye is a whole lot more of the floral eucalyptus rye spice kind of a flavor. It is sweet too, but this 1776 is a little bit more peppery to go with the name. Really, it's got a little bit more of a kick, and I think that 100 proof really does it justice. This is, it makes it a little bit stronger and instead of floral. So I think all in all, that 100 proof really helps it for me. So it's aged over 3 years. It is a straight rye. So 12 out of 15 points for the composition. Now, physical appearance of this whiskey. This is really kind of a light gold, pale gold. A little bit, on the light side. So it's certainly not a dark whiskey. So I'm going to say it's got decent legs here in the glass as I slosh it out of the glass. But, it's decent legs and, nice pale gold there. So I'm going to say 3 points for physical appearance. What about the aroma on the nose? Well, I have definitely smelled ryes that had a little bit more of a nose. I can just barely get something up front, faint rye spice. So, and my nose is close to being useless. Really, for smelling whiskey, I am just poor at that. I can't hardly smell anything. Too many sinus infections and broken noses in the past. But I'll give it 7 points on the benefit of the doubt for the nose. So now the all-important taste. A little bit sweet at the front, but not overly sweet. See, it's one reason I like ryes so much, is they're different than bourbons. They're not as sweet up front. But there's a little bit of a sweet, okay? But then the spiky, peppery stuff hits almost immediately. I mean, I was swishing around just a little bit in my mouth, and boy, this is almost like biting into a jalapeno pepper. I mean, man, it's bursting with spiky, peppery flavor going on there, and a little bit of minty quality to it. And then on the finish is where the rye spice kind of comes out. It's that floral eucalyptus type flavor on the finish. Finish is medium long. But really, I don't know if it's the proof on this, the fact that it's 100 proof, but if this wasn't the first rye that I ever had, it might have been Wild Turkey 101. So this was either the first rye or the second rye. And the reason I went to it is a guy at Specs, I asked a question, hey, well, what is rye whiskey all about? Because I'd never had any. I didn't know anything about it. And he told me it's peppery, it's spicy, it's hot. And I said, oh, well, that sounds like it's for me because I grew up eating hot peppers, all right? And so I think this may have been my first rye. And I liked it right away, initially, because of the heat that it offers. I mean, the peppery, spicy flavors. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. But here's the deal with ryes. If some ryes have straight, smooth, floral, eraser, eucalyptus, minty flavors, and there's no spiky, there's no peppery, none of that flashy stuff at all. Okay, so that's how some ryes are. So ryes have really a broad spectrum, and I like both ends of the spectrum. But this could still be my favorite rye. But I've said that on this channel about 3 different times. I mean, 10th Mountain is really, really good. Acre Texas Rye is really, really good. Lead Slinger's Rye. But of those 4 I just mentioned, this rye, 1776, is the only one that's really spiky, that's got a lot of peppery spice to it. So on the taste, 23 out of 25 points for taste. Mouthfeel and finish. I'm just going to say a medium body. I've certainly had richer feeling whiskeys. Just a little bit oily. medium long finish. It's got a nice burn on the way down. Good Kentucky hug. So 13 points on the finish. Now, price, value, and availability. Total Wine didn't have it listed, and so I don't think it's available at Total Wine. And I don't remember seeing it there when I looked at Total Wine, but on the website it didn't have it available. Specs, $28.41. Goody Goody, $31.59. But at Goody Goody it was listed as out of stock. So really Specs was the only one that listed it. But the Specs website is the worst. Okay, I mean, well, I don't know. Goody Goody's website, the websites are not really good. But Specs is notoriously bad for looking stuff up. But anyway, its availability is a little bit sketchy here. So the price and value, I think, is great. I mean, you're looking at about $30 for a 100 proof rye. That's really fantastic. So its price and value is great. Availability, not so much. So I'm going to say 8 points for price, value, and availability. Now, is this neat or a mixer? You can tell I like to drink it neat. But with the proof, 100 proof, and the spiky nature of this thing, I'm going to say it would be a fantastic mixer if you like cocktails. This is not a whiskey that you need to hide in a cocktail. This is a whiskey that would probably dominate a cocktail. Okay, so keep that in mind. I mean, this is a powerful, spiky, peppery, hot rye, and it's got a little bit of the floral, a little bit of the eucalyptus mint flavor going on. But this is going to be a dominant rye. So I'm going to say 5 points for the neat or mixer category. And bonus points, in case you couldn't tell, this is one of my top favorite ryes, which I say that for almost every rye that I drink, but oh well. 5 points because it's one of my favorites. So a total score, I'm going to say is 86. I upped that 1 point back up in there. Letter grade, I've got to give it an A+. This is, again, just one of my top favorite ryes. And I am a rye guy. So, I mean, I like bourbons too. I like Tennessee whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys, but ryes tend to rise to the top with me. So A+. My recommendation, if you're a rye guy like me, you must try the straight rye whiskey from James E. Pepper. And for a patriotic holiday like President's Day, you can't go wrong with this patriotic whiskey. This rye's got a punch to it I really like. So if you like that strong, spiky, hot rye, this is for you. It's not a gentle rye. It's got some oomph to it. Well, that does it for Stab the Dragon, this episode. Whiskey review number 18. And we will see you next week. I may have another special whiskey up. And then after that, we'll return to the North Texas Fort Worth whiskeys. So be safe out there. Don't drink and drive. I think we've got another ice storm coming tomorrow here in North Texas. Don't drink and drive and don't get drunk. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.